The 2021 season led to some optimism in Detroit. Then 2022 came around, and yikes. We're going to talk a little bit about the Old English D with the creator of the blog Old English D and many other things Tiger related. It's Jennifer Cosey is stopping by the podcast for the first time to talk about Tigers baseball here on Locked On MLB.
You are Locked On MLB, your daily MLB podcast, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Hello, baseball fans, and welcome to Locked On MLB, part of the Locked On Podcast Network, where it's your team every day. This is the daily podcast. We talk about all of Major League Baseball. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully. You know the drill. It is now Tuesday, the 22nd day of November, 2022. And we're going to be talking about the Tigers with Jennifer Cosey and some positive things. There were some negative things. There were more of those. And wondering what the optimism should be for 2023. You can follow us at Locked On MLB Pod, same handle for Instagram. And you can follow me on Twitter on my personal account, which is Sully Baseball Podcast on Instagram. Well, the internet is a strange place. And over the years, I've been able to interact with people and listen to people and meet people and sometimes just communicate with people. And you realize, well, I've never met this person in person. But it doesn't really matter because we're still communicating all the time. The baseball Twitterverse has led me to a Detroit Tiger fan with the handle Viva Tigres, which is Tigers in French. You didn't think I knew that. And I'm bringing her aboard. It's the first time she's ever appearing on the Locked On Podcast Network or even the Old Sully Baseball Show. Bring her aboard. Jennifer Cosey, welcome to the show. How you doing?
I'm doing great. Sully, thank you so much for having me on. I'm excited to talk about some baseball. Okay,
well, first of all, before we get too deep into the glories that was the 2022 season with the Detroit Tigers, where are you physically on the planet Earth and what's right behind you?
Okay, so I am in a suburb of Phoenix, Arizona. Mm-hmm. I recently moved here from Ann Arbor, Michigan. So I'm a lifelong Michigander until just a little over a year ago. But now I enjoy sunshine instead of snowfall in the winter. So and behind me, I've got a few little Tiger memorabilia things here and there. I've got an Al Kaline glove, not a signed Al Kaline glove, just an Al Kaline model glove. Mm-hmm. And a couple baseballs signed by Austin Jackson, a couple bobbleheads, stuff like that.
Now, by the way, welcome to a warmer climate. I'm a native New Englander who is currently living in California, have been living in California for a while. I don't see myself returning to New England. They would have to pay me a lot of money to return back there. So welcome to year-round sunshine. It's bizarre. Here's one thing that's maybe, and I may be wrong about this. I used to know all the sites for spring training, but if last time I checked, the Tigers still trained in Florida at Lakeland. Is that still where they
do? Train? So yes, they absolutely do. And I doubt they'll ever leave there. I wish they would come to Arizona, but they recently upgraded facilities in Lakeland. So that relationship has been going on for a very long time. And so they will not be leaving, but I am about 3 miles from the spring training stadium for Texas Rangers and Kansas City Royals. They share the facility in Surprise. And so I have, since I'm a recent transplant, I did go to a number of spring training games last year, and I had a season pass to the Arizona Fall League. So,
well, there you go. And do the Tigers have any representation in the Arizona Fall League?
Absolutely. Every team in MLB has representation in the Arizona Fall League, but the Tigers were on the Salt River Rafters team, which is in Scottsdale, across the valley, about at least 50 minutes. That's with no traffic. Right. So I got to see the Tigers, young ones, a couple times. They did come to Surprise a couple times, and then I went to the All-Star game in the championship. They were not in the championship, of course, but there were a couple Tigers on the All-Star game.
One of the reasons why I asked that, I realized at one point I knew the answer to that, but there's been so much shuffling and canceling in the minor league world recently that I was like, wait a minute, maybe they don't have representation. Like it's sometimes hard to keep track. There was a period of time I knew every AAA affiliate for every team, and now native New Englander, who's my entire life or my entire baseball watching life, the AAA team for the Red Sox have been in Pawtucket, Rhode Island, and just sending them to Pawtucket was just, something you said, and now you have to send them to Worcester. That's just
it's crazy.
I don't know any. I know for a long time it was in Toledo for Detroit. Who's there? Is it where are they? Is
Their
it still
AAA is still in Toledo.
There you go.
Double A is in Erie, Pennsylvania.
Mm-hmm.
Single A is in the Whitecaps, which is in West Michigan.
Right. By the way, I went to. I have a loving relationship with the Erie Seawolves in Erie, Pennsylvania. The first one during my stand-up comedy days, my first paid weekend show was in Erie at Juniors in Erie, where I got to a weekend as the middle act in a blizzard in Erie, Pennsylvania. And I've since named Erie, Pennsylvania, the most aptly named city in the United States. By the way, watch the Netflix real crime documentary Evil Genius, which is it's a phenomenal documentary about a real crime murder. It's like a Coen Brothers film because it's scary, there's death, but there's a dark sense of humor to it. And of course it takes place in Erie, Pennsylvania. But I had my Erie Seawolves hat for a long time, which I believe at the time they were a Pirates affiliate back in the early 1990s. But then again, I could be wrong about that. But they're still in Toledo, so that makes me happy. There's at least some consistency in the world. Right. But this has nothing to do with the Tigers or anything. I just always loved when in the 80s, when I was really, going beyond just reading the back of baseball cards, but really digging deep into it as a high schooler. The AAA affiliate for the Pirates for a while was in Hawaii. And I always thought, and when they moved it to I believe it was Buffalo, they suddenly started playing well. And I think
they had a real taxi squad available finally.
Yeah, but it's also like, hey, you're not hitting well. So let me ask you a question. Do you want to be in Pittsburgh this summer, or do you want to be in Hawaii?
Right.
Like, Skip, I can't quite hit that curveball. Better send me to Hawaii. Yeah, that was always that seemed like the most inconvenient situation for a AAA affiliate, especially in Pennsylvania, where there's so many cities, like smaller cities, within that whole state.
Right. That'd be the perfect minor league homes for a taxi squad that can actually get you a player, within a couple hours.
To West Virginia, to Youngstown, Ohio, all of that area. Let me ask you a question, Jennifer. I swear we're going to get to the modern Tigers, but I think you and I are roughly the same age, late 20s. And
yep.
I grew up in New England during the late 70s and throughout the 80s before my family moved west. So my guys were like Fred Lynn and Jim Rice and the end of Yastrzemski and the beginning of Boggs and Clemens and all them. That was that was my era that was my sweet spot growing up. Who are your players growing up, and who were the first Tigers that were kind of like, this is my guy here?
So I have a really great story for you to seg into this. So I did not become a baseball fan at a really, really young age. I was not that 7-year-old who was just all about baseball. In the fourth grade, my fourth grade teacher was a baseball fanatic. Shout out Bill Emblem, fourth grade teacher. And he made us learn the Carl Yastrzemski song. We had a literal banner in our classroom that said, "We miss you, Roberto Clemente." And we had a baseball party at one point during the year. I was not a baseball fan at that time. However, in 1983, my aunt and uncle took me to my very first Tiger game at old Tiger Stadium. And that very day, I was instantly and hopelessly forever in love with baseball. So the seeds were planted by my fourth grade teacher. I didn't appreciate it at the time. I wish I did. But I went to this game in the summer of 1983, and I fell in love with baseball and the Tigers. And Kirk Gibson was my OG Tiger. He was my first favorite Tiger.
Not a bad
And
first, not
I
a bad
love that he was
favorite
my
Tiger.
favorite Tiger because, you know, he hit the iconic home run in 1984. He hits the iconic home run in 1988 for the Dodgers. He was just such an intense guy that loved the game so much and really wanted to capitalize on those moments of, you know, winning that battle, you against the pitcher. And so that was my guy. But of course, I love Lou Whitaker. He should be in the Hall of Fame. That's a discussion for another day.
Yep.
But he comps so well to any other second baseman in the Hall. I'd like to have that discussion with some of the baseball writers of America.
You see me nodding? You see me nodding? That's Lou Whitaker should be in the Hall of Fame. If for no other reason that he did the cameo with Alan Trammell on that episode of Magnum P.I.
Right.
That's a good time to fall in love with the Tigers, by the way, when you look out there. I had Larry Herndon on as a guest a while ago, and he talked about catching the final out. That he caught the fly ball that clinched the World Series in '84. And, you know, he said it was like, it was a little bit of an out-of-body experience. Like everything was in slow motion. And, you know, when running over it, he said it wasn't a hard catch. He had to run for it, but he said he knew he was going to get it. And that just sort of was like the whole thing, just like said, time just slowed down, trying to catch that final moment. And
I mean, I can't tell you how many times I've watched that final catch and watched, you know, the team celebrate afterwards. So yeah, that's so great that you got to talk with him. I love it.
Yeah. And well, look at when you go to Tiger Stadium circa 1983, the year before. So you've already fell in love with them. And so the next year, you know, it would stink if the first year, I think it would be weird if the first year you really followed them, they won it all. But you know, you saw them the year before when they were already a very good team in that beautiful stadium. And it's just a surefire bet that you were going to be a fan for life. And if you're going to make any bets, go to betonline.net. It's your number one source for sports betting info, stats, news, and analysis. Get the latest odds and trends for every professional and amateur league out there. From football to basketball to soccer, esports, we've got it all at betonline.net. And if you love sports podcasts, I know I do, you can find those on BetOnline as well. We're always the fastest and easiest way to get your betting fix. Head to the website today or use your mobile device to learn more. BetOnline is where the game starts. Here with Jennifer Cosey, we're having some good memories for the Tigers, which means we're not talking about the 2022 Tigers. Let me just ask you one more quickly. We'll delve into the current team. The Tigers had a great run in the early part in the 2000 from basically 2006 to 2014, but they never won it all. And you know, you look back and you have a rotation that includes, you know, 3 Cy Young Award winners in Scherzer, Verlander, and Porcello. And actually Price went on to win a Cy Young, and actually Robbie Ray was on one of those. I mean, like Anibal Sanchez was like the forgotten member of that pitching staff. And you know, you got Miggy Cabrera, and you've got so many wonderful players on that team. And yet Dombrowski always forgot to put together a bullpen. And I especially look at, and I hate to say this because I do love, you know, the native New Englander in me. I love the Boston Strong team of 2013. That Tiger team should have clobbered the Red Sox. And 2 grand slams, the famous one where the cop jumping up, but then the grand slam by Shane Victorino. I mean, people forget the Tigers took a combined no-hitter into the 9th inning of game 1 and were up 5-1 in game 2. It looked like men versus boys. And I absolutely believe that if those 2 grand slams were caught at the wall, the Tigers, not only they win the pennant, but I think they make mincemeat out of the St. Louis Cardinals. And then 84 is no longer 84 is now off the hook. I
Right.
know
Yeah. When I
I'm not
became
trying
a
to pour
fan, I
salt in
didn't
the wounds, but it's frustrating for that great run to not have one that comes to fruition.
exactly. When I became a fan, I didn't realize that 1984 was going to be the last World Series win that I would see for this long. And I've had 3 sets of World Series tickets go unused. And I'm bitter. I'm like, I had tickets in 2006 to game 6. We got put out in 5 games. I had tickets in 2012. I was in denial. I'm like, we're not going to get swept. I have tickets to game 5. My sister's driving up from Indiana. We're going to the game together for game 5. There's no way we get swept in that series.
That's right. I forgot, and it's funny because my dad, may rest in peace, was a San Francisco fan. So obviously I was rooting for the Giants that year. I totally forgot that they clinched it on the road. Like I was thinking it's 4-game and the Giants. Oh, that's right. They did the call. Man, I am just getting all sorts of salt in the wound for you. I'm so sorry.
It's all right. Like I said, I have all this bitterness in my heart, but I will go to a World Series game before I die. I hope.
Yeah, well, don't make proclamations. But by the way, I've not been to Comerica. It's still called Comerica, right? Like they changed names of stadiums so quickly. Like I referred to what was it, Safeco Field in Seattle. And no, it's T-Mobile, and it's like Guaranteed Rate Park in Chicago, or even like I just got used to calling it AT&T Park in San Francisco, and now it's Oracle Park. Just stick to a name. It's the same place, okay? It's the same place.
And
Anyway,
nobody's going to stop calling it something different. So you might as well stick with the same sponsorship because no one's going to remember the next one down the line. But yes, it's still Comerica. Comparing Comerica to Tiger Stadium is really difficult because I don't know. Did you ever go to a game at Tiger Stadium?
yes, I did.
So if you were sitting in the upper deck infield, because it was there's supports, you were right on top of the action, and it was the most amazing feeling in the world. At Comerica, of course, everything is just way back, and if you sit in the upper deck, you got to sit in the club seats in the first couple rows, otherwise there's no point.
Right.
So from a seating standpoint, it's just not the same, but it is a nice park overall.
Yeah, the one time I used to go on baseball trips with my dad. Like we would go to like 3 or 4 stadiums in 3 different days. And this is in the early 90s. So this is pre StubHub and pre internet and MapQuest and everything. So we would have to line up on the Bill Mazeroski baseball guide and sort of circle all the schedules. And so we would find, okay, if we go to this game in Milwaukee on a Thursday, we could go to Wrigley Field on a Saturday, Tiger Stadium on a Sunday, get back to New Comiskey Park on a Sunday, and then fly back to San Francisco. And we used to do trips like that. And we would circle the stadiums that were rumored to be near the Wreckers Ball. So we were able to go to Tiger Stadium. We were able to go to Milwaukee County Stadium, Old Cleveland Stadium, Riverfront, Three Rivers, a bunch of the stadium, the stadium in Montreal, stadiums that we're probably no longer going to use. And we went to, I'll tell this story again. What the hell? We went to a game in 1991. The Tigers were good in 1991. And they were playing Toronto. And Toronto, obviously, this, there are a lot of fans come over from Toronto. So when Toronto was in first, Detroit was in second. And this was in July. And it was a very heated, you still had Trammell, you still had there were still some remnants of 84 on the team. And the 91 Blue Jays were terrific. And we get to our seats. I'm taking a bunch of pictures. It's packed. It's absolutely packed. And this is when tickets get mailed to your house. And they just rip them. There wasn't the scanning or anything like that. And we get to our seats, and we're getting there. My dad and I are there, and someone else is there. They have our seats. And the usher looks, and we have the wrong day. We're supposed to be there the next day. But we're going to be driving to Chicago the next day on our trip. And so my dad bribes the usher and says, find us an extra seat. And the guy said, all right, if there's a two together, and said, I'll keep you, like he was going to move us around. And we were, of course now they would scan the ticket and see that it's incorrect. Anyway, so I'm there. My dad is a little nervous because he doesn't want to be, kicked out. And the first batter of the game is Devon White of Toronto. First pitch is ball one. Second pitch is hit for a homer. Next up is Roberto Alomar. Third pitch of the game is a home run. The next batter up is Joe Carter. The fourth pitch of the game is at his head, and a bench-clearing brawl breaks out. So we've seen 4 pitches and seen 2 homers and a brawl. And I turned to my dad and said, if they kick us out now, we've already seen a lot. And my dad laughed and relaxed. And ultimately, we did have to move a couple times. And in the 7th or 8th inning, Morgana, the Kissing Bandit, for anyone who doesn't remember her, she was a woman who was blessed physically and would run onto the field and try to kiss a player and then get arrested. Well, she showed up and ran on the field and tried to kiss John Olerud, who I think had a heart attack. And then she next ran over to Robbie Alomar, who planted a kiss on her, and then she was arrested. So needless to say, we got our money's worth. And my one time I went to Tiger Stadium.
That is a great story. I have another great story
Tell
relating to the Blue Jays. So in 1987, I was a student at the University of Michigan. And if you remember the end of the 1987 season, it was coming down to the very last game between the Blue Jays and the Tigers for the division.
And it was Jimmy Key versus Frank Tanana.
Frank Tanana.
Right.
Mm-hmm. So
did that from memory.
Students. Yep, that's a great memory. So we're just students, we're just like, well, we have to go to this game. We have to go stand out for bleacher tickets because back in those days, they did not sell bleacher tickets until day of the game. Mm-hmm. So we said, we're going to get up early in the morning. We're going to drive down to the stadium with the one person that in our dorm that has access to a car. And we're going to stand out and try to get tickets to this game. So we do it. We arrived, I think it was like 8:30 in the morning, and the line was already halfway around the stadium. So we're like, I don't know if we're going to get in. We might not even get tickets. Who knows what's going to happen? So we wait in line all this time. We get in. So we're in the bleachers, of course, and it's just raucous. I mean, the place is crazy, crazy rowdy. Some guy in the bleachers disembowels a stuffed Blue Jay animal, just a stuffed animal, Blue Jay, just rips it apart to shreds. And, of course, if you remember the game, it's a 1-0 pitchers duel. The Tigers are winning 1-0. In the 7th inning.
Did Herndon get the home run in that? Or was it Chet Lemon?
So.
Or was it
I
Chet
think
Lemon?
It was Herndon, if my memory serves. But the reason my memory is clouded is because in the 7th inning, when we're ahead 1-0 in what's essentially a play-in game, our ride says we better leave to avoid the traffic. And I'm like melting down. I'm like, what do you mean we're not? What do you mean we have to leave? And if it had been modern day, I would have said, you guys can go. I'm catching an Uber back to Ann Arbor. Yeah. I don't care how much it costs. But I had no cell phone. I had no ATM. I mean, I think I had an ATM card, but I didn't know where I just had no wherewithal to get back to Ann Arbor from Detroit on my own. So we leave, but I'm like hanging on to the gate, the fence, like trying to watch as we're leaving the game. And then I'm fuming the entire ride back to Ann Arbor. And ever since then, I tell everybody, if you come to the game with me, we're not leaving early. I don't care if it's raining, snowing. I don't care if we're losing 11-0. We are not leaving this game early.
It's a clinching game. The point is to watch them clinch. By the way, you mentioned Kirk Gibson earlier. My favorite part of the clip of him hitting the home run while in Los Angeles against Oakland in the '88 World Series is you see as the ball is traveling into the right field stands, you can see some of the fans who have left early and how many of them suddenly their brake lights go on and they realize they were at game 1 of the World Series and didn't see the Kirk Gibson home run.
Can you imagine being that stupid?
No, never. It's telling that we have been talking for 25, nearly 30 minutes, and we still have not brought up the 2022 Detroit Tigers. We will talk
I think
about.
there's a reason for that.
All right, well, I'm gonna be a nasty human being, Jennifer. The 2021 Tigers finished the season pretty well. And there was this sense of, oh, okay, they're not pushed anymore. And there was no sense that they were going to win the division in 2022, but it's not like there was a juggernaut in that division. And there was a thought of, all right, they're taking the next big step towards improvement. And they brought in Baez. So suddenly they became a buyer. And you could look up and you could say, all right, this could be a team that plays well, that could contend. They could pitch. They have a couple of new hitters. AJ Hinch showed he's not all just trash cans and buzzers. And wow, they could not have got off to a worse start. And they just never. They took a massive step forward. It's not a massive step backwards. I'm sorry. In 2022, you follow the team a hell of a lot closer than I do. Dr. Cosey, please give us the autopsy.
So there's a lot of things. Of course, injuries are part of any team season. I don't like to use injuries as an excuse, but almost every single member of our starting rotation went down for a significant amount of time. The player who had the most starts of anyone in our rotation was Tarek Skubal. Mm-hmm. And that was only 21 starts. That was the most starts we got out of anybody. And so that was part of it. Eduardo Rodriguez was MIA for personal reasons for a large part of the season. And then also we have to talk about our hitting, which was in the bottom 3 in the American League in almost every single offensive statistical category. We had people hitting way below the Mendoza line, the worst hitting slash lines of their career. We didn't have a single player with an OPS over 800. It was just ridiculous.
Yeah. And I'm right now, I'm at baseballreference.com, the single greatest website in the history of the planet Earth.
It is.
I'm not one of these people who clings to WAR as the end all be all stat, but I treat it like Wikipedia. I think it's a good jumping off point. Now, Javier Baez had a letdown first season with the Detroit Tigers and led the team in WAR. I mean, if there's anything to just say, because before you and I got on the call, I just pulled up a couple pages and I thought, like, who was their top player? Okay, let's just look at WAR and use that as a jumping off. Baez was the top player, and I don't see anyone looking at Javier Baez as he's going to be the next statue built around Comerica Park anytime soon. Just everything went wrong this year, and I mean, I swear, Jennifer Cosey, I was trying to find some happy moments to point at, and they were they had a no-hitter, didn't they?
Yes, but I think the only thing I can really think of that was fun about the season was Riley Green, our rookie of the year. He had a pretty good rookie campaign. He was fun to watch. Our best hitter was his nickname was Hittin' Harold, and his slash line was like 271, 300, 381.
Yeah,
I'm not even joking. Like, you can't make it up.
Under 400, and he's right. Like Eric Haas. He had some power, but
we had no power.
Yeah, nobody hit more than 17 home runs. Nobody batted over 300. No OPSs in the. Did anyone hit the 700s?
No, nobody was over 800 for OPS.
Yeah, I mean, anyone who gave you a little bit of hope from the year before, like Badu or Candelario or Torkelson, just wet the bed this year. Yeah, I mean, It was not probably. I mean, if there was one positive thing, it was this was the year that Cabrera got his 3,000th hit, right?
Right.
So
That was
there you
fun
go.
to watch the lead up to that. Yeah, those were really the very puny highlights. And the rest was just an awful.
Okay, so let's get down to things here. 2023 is coming around. If there's any team that I think, I'm not saying be reckless because this team's nowhere near a pennant, but you get the sense that this team doesn't have even that. It's weird. I mean, like they need just a professional hitter in their lineup, and you wonder how much of a ripple effect that would have. I'm not saying they'd be like Terry Pendleton, put him in the middle of the Braves lineup in the middle of 1991 and suddenly go from last to first, because that team had a ton of talent that was just about ready to, develop. I don't see that with this Tiger team, but you got to look and say, if there's a quality hitter out there who could at least take some of the pressure off of everyone, or maybe have someone see some better pitches, don't you think they would almost have to make a move like that? Otherwise, you're going to have a completely lost 2023 as well.
They would, but I don't think Tigers fans trust Chris Ilitch to do that. Last year, they should have just signed Correa. Yeah. He was available. They should have signed Correa. That was the move. They didn't do it. The year before that, there were tons of quality free agents available at a reasonable price. We did nothing. And so I don't think anybody trusts that Chris Ilitch is going to do anything that's worth noting.
By the way, for those of you who are going to listen to the other, on this Thanksgiving week, listen to some of the other shows I'm putting together, I am doing a whole show about something. I talked about it a little bit last week, but I want to take the stigma away from buying a championship. Oh, they just bought a championship. What's wrong with that? Isn't that what you want your owners to do? Isn't that what their job is? For goodness sakes, why is that looked upon as something, well, they just bought that? Great. Fantastic. It beats, well, we're developing this player. Ooh, they asked for more than $5 an hour. We're going to have to deal with them. But they got 3 young players. It's almost like a pyramid scheme. Like, we got these prospects, you got these 3 prospects, you got these 3 prospects. The lesson we learned, and I'm going to talk about this in tomorrow's show, but the lesson we learned from the NLCS is when big free agents are available, sign them. Sign Absolutely. Them. If you can make a move to improve your current team, do it. Do it. Because exactly. yes, sometimes those prospects will turn into sometimes a Hall of Famer like Jeff Bagwell or Ryan Sandberg, or an MVP like Josh Donaldson. But most of the time, they're Matt Laporta or Kyle Drabeck or, what's his name? Montero, who everyone in the Yankees thought was always going to be the next Cabrera. Then he got fat and someone threw an ice cream sandwich at him. You know what? Hoarding your prospects. Oh, because we're trying to, a lot of times they turn out great. Sometimes they bust. And what are you doing if not trying to win a championship? So, think about how irrelevant the Phillies and the Padres were. Phillies couldn't sniff a winning record, and the Padres forgot they existed. And then they're the 2 teams in the NLCS. I don't know, Jennifer Cosey. Yeah. I don't know. I don't understand. I don't get the world. I don't understand what's happening. No one can explain it to me. There you go.
No, I'll tell you what. And when Chris Ilitch's father, Mike Ilitch, gave a surprise deal to Prince Fielder. Now, it didn't work out, but when the signing happened, I stood in my kitchen for 10 minutes straight with my fist in the air, like, yes, we just signed another piece that's going to help us win a championship. It didn't work out, but he had a neck injury and there were other factors. So, but like you said, you have to go for it when you have that window. You don't know when you're going to get back to the World Series. You go for it when you can.
They won a pennant with him. I mean, it's not like he was a total bust.
No.
They got to the World Series. They've only been to the World Series 3 times in your fandom. And one of them was with Prince Fielder at first base.
Yeah.
Oh my goodness. I had to cough. Well, look at Jennifer Cosey is a diehard Tigers fan, and as you can follow her on Twitter. Now, why is your Twitter handle in French?
It's actually Spanish. So
I'm sorry.
When my other favorite Tiger, Maglio Ordonez, was a Tiger, we had a Venezuelan contingent on the team of like, I don't know, even how many players at one time. And so it's Spanish, just for, let's go Tigers. And so that is why my handle is that.
Well, follow it, everyone. Look at her lower third. It's right there. Follow it. And, check her out. And by the way, I just want to thank you. And I have gone back and forth over the years. I'm really glad that you now can be listed as not just a friend of the podcast, but a guest of the podcast when I do my little Twitter blasts. For how many more weeks we're going to have Twitter before that implodes. I'm going to stick around. People are leaving. I want to see how this ends. But hey,
I'm going down with the ship for sure.
No kidding.
Totally going down with the ship.
Yeah, it's like.
But thank you so much for having me on. I've had such a great time. I really enjoyed it.
By the way, the people who are leaving Twitter now are like your friends who left the clinching game in 1987. You're going to leave now? This is where the Death Star is about to blow up. What are you talking about? Tanana has two outs at the bottom of the ninth or top of the ninth. Let's go. Hey, thanks so much for making Locked On MLB your first listen. For your second listen, check out Locked On Sports Today. From games that matter the most to the biggest stories in sports, go beyond the scoreboard and behind the scenes with local experts and insights only Locked On can provide. Locked On Sports Today is available on this app, YouTube, and wherever you get your podcasts. Talking Tigers like you do on Thanksgiving week with now friend and guest of the podcast, Jennifer Cosey. Nice to have you on board finally. This has been Locked On MLB for the 22nd day of November. Happy birthday, Lisa, 2022. I am your host, Paul Francis Sullivan. Please call me Sully.